It was Monday, June 24, 2002, in West Columbia, South Carolina. 15-year-old Kara Robinson wasn't planning anything special that day. She had spent the morning at a friend's house. The two of them talked about maybe going to the movies later that evening. But first, Kara offered to help with some chores in the yard, watering plants, rolling up the garden hose, small things that adults often avoided. For her, it was just a normal summer day, with no sign of what was about to come. That's when a white Pontiac Trans Am slowed down in front of the house. A man in his 30s stepped out. Short hair, neat appearance, nothing that immediately screamed danger. In his hand he carried papers, looking like flyers or advertisements. He smiled, but his eyes didn't match that smile. They were cold. Focused. He walked up to Kara and asked, "Are your parents home?" Confused for a second, she answered, "This isn't my house, I'm just visiting my friend." The smile disappeared. Out of those papers came a gun. The cold metal pressed against her neck. His voice was calm, almost chilling. "Get in the car. Don't make a scene." It all happened in seconds. A wave of fear rushed through Kara, but her mind stayed clear. She knew she couldn't run, not with a gun at her neck. Screaming might get her killed right there. So she made the hardest decision of her life, she stayed calm. She got into the car. The sound of the door shutting was the moment her old life ended. Behind the curtains, her friend caught a glimpse of the scene. But it was too quick, too confusing. Later she would tell police that she only remembered the man holding some papers. Nothing more. But Kara knew the truth, she had just been dragged into a world completely unlike the one she left behind. The car pulled away smoothly. The man drove like nothing was wrong, as if Kara was just another passenger. His tone was disturbingly casual. He talked about traffic, made comments about a song on the radio. That calmness was scarier than the gun. Kara knew her fate was changing with every mile. She made a choice: don't waste time on panic. Instead, she started counting turns, memorizing street signs, colors of houses. "If I ever get out, I'll need this," she told herself. On the back seat, there were large plastic containers. He ordered her inside one. Kara obeyed. The lid shut tight and darkness swallowed her. The smell of chemicals and plastic filled her nose. It was hard to breathe, but she forced herself to stay quiet. She memorized everything: the stamped number inside the box, the sound the lid made when it closed, even the faint squeak of the seat when he adjusted it. Inside that box, Kara focused on her breathing. Stay calm. Think. She listened carefully. How long was the drive? How many times did the car stop? What noises came from outside? Every detail could matter later. Back at her friend's house, panic spread quickly. Kara's things were still in the yard, but Kara was gone. A phone call to her mother carried the words every parent dreads: "Kara's missing." Her mother felt the world collapse. Kara was always responsible. She never disappeared without a word. Police were called within minutes. The first officers wrote down, "Missing juvenile, last seen around 2 p.m., front yard." The description of the white Pontiac went out to every patrol. Within hours, the news spread through the neighborhood. Parents rushed their kids inside, neighbors called one another. Fear was already growing. The container was carried into an apartment. When the lid finally opened, Kara's first sensation was the stale, suffocating smell of a closed room. At first glance, the apartment looked ordinary: table, chairs, a small kitchen. But the details were terrifying. On the floor, a mattress. Beside it, handcuffs and straps. On the table, a pile of bills and old newspapers. It wasn't random. It was a place designed for control. The man moved calmly, almost methodically. No nervousness, no hesitation. Every step was practiced, like he'd rehearsed it before. His eyes measured her, not as a person, but as an object. For him, Kara wasn't human, she was something he owned. He spoke only once, in a voice without emotion. "If you do as I say, this will be easier." Then he began laying things out. Handcuffs, ropes, a blanket for the mattress. He worked with precision. For Kara, it was the most chilling confirmation, this wasn't an accident. This was planned. Kara's heart was pounding, but her thoughts grew sharper. She realized something, fear would destroy her. If she gave in, she would be broken. If she found a way to stay calm, even inside her mind, she might survive. When the assault began, Kara did something extraordinary. She detached. Her body was there, but her mind escaped. She pictured her mom's face, her dad, her best friend. She told herself over and over, "This is temporary. I will get out." She focused on details, the stain on the ceiling, the numbers on a paper, the chill of the wall against her hand. These became her anchors. Each detail built a wall between her mind and him. When it ended, Kara lay still, staring at the ceiling. A flood of disgust washed over her. Her body no longer felt like hers. But in her mind, one sentence echoed. "This won't break me." Pain was there, yes. But inside her, defiance was stronger. One day, she told herself, she would tell the world, and that would be her victory. At the same time, her parents were with the police. Her father tried to stay composed, answering endless questions about Kara's friends, her habits. Her mother broke down in tears, "My little girl always tells me where she goes." Detectives went door to door, talking to neighbors, searching yards, writing every possible lead. On the local TV, Kara's school photo appeared, smiling, young, missing. The reporter said, "This case has shaken the community." Families sat in their living rooms, feeling their own sense of safety slipping away. Back in the apartment, Kara learned quickly. Every movement of her captor told her something. He had routines, rituals, even. He liked control. He expected silence. But Kara realized he also had weaknesses. He drank beer and zoned out in front of the TV. When the commercials came on, his attention drifted. Those moments became her training ground. She memorized the timing. She pictured what she could do with those precious seconds. Each time he restrained her, Kara paid attention to the exact order. Which wrist first? How tight the cuffs were? Which sound came from the chain when he pulled it? She turned every terrifying moment into data. It was survival through observation. But when the assaults ended, the hardest part came, the silence. Lying on the mattress, Kara felt waves of nausea and shame. Her body ached, but her mind refused to collapse. She repeated her mantra, "This will not define me." She found small refuges, counting cracks in the ceiling, listening to the dripping faucet, tracing patterns on the wall. Each detail gave her something to hold on to. Sometimes, she imagined herself back home. She pictured walking barefoot in the yard, hearing the dog bark, smelling her mom's cooking. She let those images flood her until the walls of the apartment faded. It wasn't denial. It was armor. Her way to survive the hours that seemed endless. Meanwhile, outside, the search was expanding. Detectives gathered in the Robinsons' living room. Maps spread across the table, photographs pinned with notes. Neighbors lined up to give statements. But the frustration was growing, no solid leads, just fragments. The police chief addressed reporters, "We are working around the clock. We need the public's help." Behind the cameras, officers admitted the truth, the longer this goes on, the slimmer the chances. But none of them were ready to stop. Days blurred together inside the apartment. Kara began to act. She lowered her gaze when he looked at her. She kept her voice quiet, never defiant. To him, it seemed like she was breaking down. In reality, she was building a mask. The act was convincing enough that he started letting his guard down. He believed she was subdued. That belief gave her space to plan. At night, when he fell asleep, Kara would replay everything in her head. The layout of the apartment, the sound of each door, even the rhythm of his breathing. She created a mental map. Every piece of information was a weapon she stored away. The assaults left her feeling filthy and broken, but she clung to something else, control of her own mind. She reminded herself, he can't touch what I'm thinking. That thought became her fortress. When tears came, she let them. But even in those tears, she was thinking, watching, remembering. Outside, the community was mobilizing. Neighbors organized vigils. Hundreds gathered with candles, whispering prayers. Kara's picture was everywhere, on lampposts, in gas stations, across TV screens. One woman told a reporter, "It feels like this is every parent's child. We can't sleep. We're waiting for news." For the Robinson family, the waiting was unbearable. Her mother refused to leave the phone, clutching it as if holding on to Kara herself. Her father walked from officer to officer, demanding answers that no one could give. In the bedrooms upstairs, Kara's siblings cried quietly, confused and scared. And through it all, Kara was surviving, silently, strategically, waiting for her chance. By the second night, the police had turned the case into a full-scale operation. The command post looked like a war room. Maps covered the walls, pins marking sightings of white Pontiacs across the county. Every lead was checked. Every tip was logged. But again and again, detectives came back empty-handed. Phones rang constantly. Some calls were genuine, others were false alarms. One report described a man handing out flyers at a strip mall. Another swore they saw Kara at a gas station. Each time, officers rushed out, only to return with nothing. The pressure on the department was brutal. Reporters swarmed the police station, pushing microphones toward anyone in uniform. Why no progress? Is the suspect local? The department spokesman chose his words carefully, knowing a single mistake could compromise the case. In the Robinson household, despair grew deeper. Kara's mother broke down in front of a news camera, clutching her daughter's photo. That image spread quickly, replayed across local news channels. Neighbors dropped off food, lit candles, offered comfort, but the fear in the community was spreading. If it could happen to Kara, it could happen to anyone. Inside the apartment, Kara kept her own kind of war room. She built walls in her mind, shielding herself from what was happening. Each attack left her hollow, but also more determined. She told herself, he will not break me. She studied everything, the sound of pipes when water ran, the creak of the floor, the clutter on the kitchen counter. Even the magnets on the fridge, names, numbers, were stored in her memory. To the outside world, she was a missing child. Inside that apartment, she was already preparing to become the witness who could bring him down. And she knew, one chance was all she needed. The next morning, Kara sensed it. Her captor was exhausted. He'd been drinking, pacing, glued to the television, waiting for news. Now his body betrayed him, his breathing slowed, heavier, uneven. Then it dropped into that rhythm she'd been listening for. He was asleep. This was it. Kara didn't waste the moment. She carefully twisted her wrist, forcing bone and skin against the cold edge of the cuff. Pain burned through her arm, but she didn't stop. Millimeter by millimeter, her hand slid free. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure it would wake him. But his snore stayed steady. She breathed slow, steady, like she had practiced in her mind. She rose from the mattress. The floor creaked where she expected. She stepped around it. At the door, she paused, hand on the knob, counting 3 heartbeats. Then, with the quietest click, the door opened. The hallway air felt like freedom. Down the stairs, across the lot, her body moved without thought. Two men sat in a car nearby. She didn't scream, didn't collapse. Her voice was calm, steady. "Call 911. I've been kidnapped. The apartment is upstairs. He has handcuffs, ropes, magnets on the fridge with names. There are bills on the table. He's asleep, but it's not safe." The men froze, then grabbed their phones. Within minutes, police swarmed the complex. Kara repeated every detail with razor-sharp clarity. Officers rushed upstairs. Inside, they found exactly what she had described: the mattress, the restraints, the receipts, the magnets. Her words were evidence. Her memory, a map. At the Robinson home, Joy exploded into tears. Her parents clung to her picture, whispering thanks, prayers, disbelief. But Kara wasn't done. She sat with detectives and delivered a full account: layout, patterns, sounds. Every fact was exact. The officers, hardened by years of cases, glanced at each other. They knew what they had: not just a survivor, but a witness sharp enough to end a predator's career. News of Kara's escape spread like wildfire. Across West Columbia, people turned on their TVs and radios and heard the words, "She got out. She's alive." Relief swept the town. But for investigators, this was only the beginning. The man was still out there. Detectives immediately linked Kara's details to cold cases from Virginia. The way he bound victims, the materials he used, the method of control, it all lined up. Forensic teams processed the apartment. Fibers, tape, fingerprints, DNA. Piece by piece, the puzzle pointed to one man. A man they now knew had been hunting girls for years. Families in Virginia who had waited for answers received the calls. For some, it was the moment their long nightmare gained a name. Tears came, but so did a strange kind of relief. Grief never faded, but now it had edges. It had truth. Kara, meanwhile, was working with detectives as if she'd been trained for it. Wrapped in a blanket, she pointed to a map, describing where each item had been, when he moved, how often he drank. She recalled the serial number inside the plastic bin. She remembered the pattern of footsteps, the creak of a floorboard near the kitchen. Every detail she gave saved investigators hours of work. The community rallied. Vigils turned into celebrations. Neighbors who once whispered in fear now spoke with pride about the girl who outsmarted her captor. Reporters who had doubted police now wrote about strategy, memory, resilience. And behind every headline, Kara was the quiet engine driving the case forward. The search stretched south. Tips came in from Georgia, then Florida. Police tracked bank cards, phone calls, vehicle sightings. And then, a chilling breakthrough. During a phone conversation with a family member, the suspect confessed, "I've committed more crimes than I can even remember." The line sent shivers through investigators. This wasn't just one case. It was years of horror. On June 27, 2002, patrol officers spotted the white Pontiac in Florida. Backup units closed in. The chase began down US 41. Sirens screamed, tires screeched, and radios crackled with clipped commands: left side clear. Distance 20. Hold position. The suspect pressed the gas. But ahead, officers rolled out spike strips. Seconds later, the tires blew. The car swerved, slowed, and finally stopped. Officers shouted commands: "Show your hands. Step out of the car." But the man didn't surrender. A shot rang out. In that final moment, he chose death over justice. The news hit like a wave. In West Columbia, in Virginia, across every home that had waited for years, the name finally attached itself to the crimes. Families of past victims wept, some from grief, some from the relief of finally knowing. And in the Robinson household, Kara sat quietly, listening to the news. She didn't smile, she didn't celebrate. She simply exhaled, the deep, shaking breath of someone who had been underwater for 4 long days, and finally surfaced. With the suspect gone, the investigation shifted into its final phase, truth and closure. Kara became the cornerstone. She sat with detectives again and again, reconstructing every moment. When he turned on the TV, when he tightened the cuffs, when he walked to the window. Her memory was surgical. Forensic teams confirmed every detail: fibers on the mattress, fingerprints on the fridge, bills scattered on the table. The web of evidence was complete. And in Virginia, cold case files were finally marked with a name. The media adjusted their tone. At first, they had chased sensational headlines. Now they began telling a different story, not of horror, but of resilience. Reporters spoke about a teenage girl who had survived not by luck, but by discipline. She had memorized, calculated, waited. She had turned survival into strategy. In schools, her story became a lesson. Teachers explained the importance of awareness, of trusting instincts, of staying calm in chaos. Parents used her example to talk to their children. In church basements and town halls, the phrase spread, "Every detail matters." For Kara, recovery was uneven. Some nights, the sound of water pipes brought back the creak of that apartment floor. Some mornings, she woke drenched in fear. But slowly, step by step, she reclaimed her life. She learned that trauma doesn't vanish, but it can be carried. And every day she carried it, she grew stronger. When she finally agreed to speak publicly, she chose her words carefully. She didn't describe the acts in detail. She didn't want to be remembered for what was done to her. She wanted to be remembered for how she fought back, with her mind, with her will, with her refusal to give up. And people listened. They understood that survival wasn't always about strength or speed. Sometimes, it was about patience, memory, and timing. In the weeks that followed, West Columbia returned to something like normal. But it wasn't the same. Families locked their doors earlier. Children walked in groups. And everyone, quietly, carried Kara's story inside them. For law enforcement, the case became a textbook. At police academies, instructors told cadets, "Listen to the victim. Every detail counts." On a whiteboard, one phrase was written in bold: "Calm saves lives." Below it, Kara Robinson, 2002. It wasn't an official title, but everyone knew what it meant. In Virginia, families lit candles at the graves of daughters taken too soon. Their grief never ended, but for the first time, it was framed by truth. One mother told a reporter, "I don't know what to say to that girl except thank you. She gave us answers. She gave us closure." The word spread across the state like a benediction. Kara herself kept living quietly. Some days were heavy, some lighter. She laughed with friends, went back to school, tried to fit into the rhythm of ordinary teenage life. But beneath it, there was steel. She knew she had done something extraordinary, not by choice, but by necessity. Later, she spoke to groups of young people. She explained how she survived, by breathing slow, by counting, by memorizing. She told them, "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is appear broken, because that's how you win time. That's how you survive." Her words echoed in classrooms, youth centers, and living rooms. They weren't about fear. They were about power, the quiet kind that hides inside patience. The media eventually moved on to new stories, but the lesson stayed. It wasn't about a monster. It was about a girl who refused to break. Her story became a reminder: the world is not always just, but resilience is real, and courage can live in silence. And so this story ends differently than most true crime stories do. The predator was named and stopped. Families got their answers. A community learned. And one girl lived. Not because the world was fair, but because a 15-year-old chose the hardest weapon of all: clear, unshakable reason. And that is why this story, above all, has a happy ending.